Good evening and welcome to the Broward Metropolitan Planning Organization's final eTownHall Let's Talk Transportation. I'm your moderator, Jade Alexander. Thank you so much for joining us on this Wednesday night. Having choices, options, and access to where we want to go and what we want to do sounds pretty nice, right? It's figuring out how to pay for these options that definitely creates the challenges. Tonight, we have 4 guests who know exactly how valuable an improved transportation system is for Broward County, and we're going to talk with them, all of you, about investing in our future. Speak Up Broward is about finding out what's important to you. Are you willing to pay more for an improved transportation system that will ease the increasing traffic problem and make it easier to get to work, to school, to concerts on the beach? Although tonight is our last night of our very unique 4-part eTownHall series, Speak Up Broward is an ongoing effort, and the comments and the suggestions that you offer here tonight will help determine the funding and the means for a competitive, affordable, and reliable transportation system. And as our way of saying thank you for bringing your questions and your comments to the table, we're offering you that chance to win a $500 prize by completing the survey right there at speakupbroward.org, but you've only got until October 24th. So again, it's speakupbroward.org until October 24th. Now, if you're on the phone and you want to ask a question, real easy. All you have to do is press 0 at any time. You can also dial the toll-free number right there on your screen in the same process. Just press 0 if you'd like to ask a question. And as always, you can participate in our live online chat by going to speakupbroward.org. All right, now we're going to introduce you to our experts this evening. Joining us first, Bill Cross, Director of Planning and Capital Development of the South Florida Regional Transportation Authority, otherwise known as SFRTA.
Thank you. You
How
got that
big is
out
your business
perfectly.
card? That's
oversized.
a long name. Also tonight, Mason Jackson, President and CEO of Career Source Broward, formerly known as Workforce One. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you for having me.
We also have Dave Wallace, Director of Public Policy Advocacy at United Way of Broward County. Welcome.
Thank you.
And rounding out our panel tonight is repeat panelist Greg Stuart, Executive Director of the Broward MPO, who saw we were having so much fun with these transportation parties, you had to come back, huh?
Jade, I couldn't do anything without you. You know that.
All right. Now, remember, if you're joining us by phone and you want to ask that question, you can press 0 at any time. All right, let's get started. Since we may have some folks that are joining us tonight unfamiliar with what the MPO is, what is this concept? Ta-da! That's what Greg is here for. We need you to fill in our folks that are listening, that are watching. What is MPO?
Okay, the Metropolitan Planning Organization is actually a group of 37 elected officials from Broward County, 4 county commissioners, 1 representative from the South Florida Regional Transportation Authority, or also known as SFRTA, big business cards. And Broward County government, we have 4 county commissioners, 3 of the county commissioners representing the county, the bus services, the street lights, street repairs, and so forth. And then we also have one elected official from all 31 cities and 1 representative from the school board, who's the school board chair. They're responsible for actually approving the budgets for all transportation projects that contain in Broward that have any federal or state funds tied to them. So on a given year, they will gavel or approve about $1.3 to $1.5 billion worth of transportation projects that we all rely on, whether it's a roadway project, a rail project, a bus project, the airport, the seaport, anything that has state and federal dollars, that board is responsible for actually making sure money gets to them.
All right, so here's what I'm going to do. I've got an online question here from our online chat, and I'll put it out there, and whoever feels comfortable answering, and if somebody wants to piggyback that answer, feel free, okay? This is from Nicole in Tamarack. She's participating in the online chat. Here's her question. I saw that Broward County is raising bus fares. Will the fare increase pay for improvements, or is it only enough to afford what we have today? It sounds like she's asking, is this for repairs and, you know, making everything nice and pretty, or is this for what we are hoping to accomplish?
I guess I can jump on that one. Just to share with Nicole, and it's very important that Broward County has enough money to operate its bus system. Right now, the system itself is what you see is what you've got, but they're running into a deficit. There's not enough money from the general fund to support the operation of the bus system. Unfortunately, there has been no choice because there was no other revenue sources for Broward County Transit to operate. So the County Commission took the vote that they needed to increase ridership fares. Will that allow for some expansion of the system? A little bit. Will it cover some of the deficit for another few years? Possibly. But of course, Broward County Transit, which is a phenomenally run and very large transit system for Southeast Florida, it's the second largest, really does need additional capital to allow for expansions to occur.
All right, Bill, Speak Up Broward has been something on the table for a little while, so we've been hearing from folks other than just tonight. One question here, what are the anticipated economic benefits of projects like the WAVE and the Tri-Rail Coastal Link?
Okay, sure. We're glad to handle that one. Well, let's start with the WAVE, the downtown Fort Lauderdale modern streetcar. Very exciting project. Was actually the brainchild of some of the businesses and other electeds within downtown Fort Lauderdale. And while it's going to be a transportation project, they're also very excited about the economic benefits. It's been shown in other cities around the country where these have been developed that there's strong development that occurs within a walking distance from these streetcars as they go in. So we can expect some very strong economic growth. We've already seen new residential units being approved and the construction started in downtown Fort Lauderdale just about the time that we got our first federal grant and the project really became a reality.
Excellent. We have a caller on the line that has a question for us. Delilah, are you there?
Hello, yes. I would like to know when are we going to have a public transportation from Nob Hill to whether Broward Boulevard or Sunrise. We don't have any transportation on that area. On Nob Hill Road between Clary Boulevard and Broward Boulevard.
May I?
Absolutely.
Delilah, thanks for the question, and that is a very good part of what we're talking about with Broward County Transit and their ability to expand service. There are areas of the county that aren't currently served by bus service or train service or even the WAVE, that's the starter project. So we're really looking to try to help the county find funding to expand their system. And as that occurs, that obviously will allow for service from Nob Hill to downtown Fort Lauderdale onto the Broward Boulevard corridor and out to Sunrise. There are plans for that. The good news is there are plans. The bad news is we're just lacking the funding at this point.
Now remember, if you're just joining us by phone and you want to ask a question, simply press 0 at any time. You can also ask a question via our online chat by going to speakupbroward.org, and that's exactly what Kevin in Fort Lauderdale has done here. Here's his question. More trains are coming to Broward, freight and passenger. I think this is great for the economy and public transportation, but I am concerned about increased rail traffic at railroad intersections, both safety and traffic delay perspectives. What is being done to address these concerns?
Okay, I guess I'll take a crack at that since the shorthand for South Florida Regional Transportation Authority is Tri-Rail, so we might know a few things about the rail. There's some concern about the future and what the increases in freight, passenger travel, and all aboard Florida may do at the grade crossings. And there's been a lot of work done by the various agencies involved to try to mitigate that. Certainly the Broward MPO has worked with all aboard on creating and helping to fund some quiet zones. And the quiet zones, much of that equipment that's required to do that is also has secondary safety benefits and will help seal the crossings so that the safety really should not be a concern out there. It is possible that there'll be some increased delay as these new services roll out, but what is important to keep in mind is that a passenger train is short, it operates at higher speed, and it just doesn't have the kind of impact that a 2-mile long freight train is going to have in the corridor. So much of the increase is really passenger rail, and that's just not going to have a serious impact.
Mason, I have one here that I think you might be able to answer. Why is mass transit important to the business community? What role does transportation actually play in attracting employees to a specific area?
Well, thank you, Jade. It's extremely important to the business community because, after all, it is their employees. And as any business person will tell you, they're nothing without the talent that makes up their workforce. And a poorly run, inefficient, sporadic mass transit system means delays in services, it means lateness, it means frustrated employees when they get to work. So it's really important to the business community that they have a good running transportation system. And there's one other thing. Young talent today prefers mass transit. They actually don't like cars. They don't have the dependence on cars that the older generation does. They're not as in love with cars as we once were. In fact, the statistics are that only 44% of teenagers get their driver's license within the first year that they're eligible to get it. So clearly they're not in love with the car. So they're looking at mass transit. And most millennials nowadays are looking at where they want to live. They're moving to places, they're making lifestyle decisions first and moving to where they want to live. And a big part of that is mass transit. They want to know that they're in a community that's green, environmentally sensitive, and mass transit is a big part of that.
All right. Dave, we got some great questions here tonight. What impact will our future transportation plans have on working families?
Great question. United Way is doing a lot of work right now with working families, and what we're finding is about 47% of working families in Broward County are struggling just to make ends meet. And when you layer on that what the cost of transportation is in Broward County, we find that the average household is spending 26% of their monthly income on transportation. You layer that on top of the cost of housing, and it becomes really difficult for families to make ends meet when they have those kinds of budget items that they have to cover. So finding and expanding different kinds of options for transportation, more reliable and cheaper options for transportation, is important for working families. It's expensive to operate a car here in South Florida. I think the average household in Broward County spends about $437 to operate a car, versus public transportation could only cost $36 a month. So if we can find a way to expand transportation options and find more inexpensive economical ways for families to access transportation to get to where they need to go, it has a huge impact on working families.
Sure. Fred on the phone with a question about buses. Fred, are you there?
What I'd like to know is why the bus is taking so long on Commercial and Nob Hill, because sometimes you have to go to work and you're there at 7 o'clock and the bus is not there. That's what you have a specific time. You're always trying to be there in time, but you're always late. You reach to work late. Sometimes the bus is on time. But if the bus transit is running out every 15 minutes, you know to have yourself prepared for that. I would love to see that going on, because I'd rather not to drive my car than to travel with the bus.
Jade, if you wouldn't mind, I'm going to take a stab at that. Just to share, one of the things that we've been working, Broward Metropolitan Planning Organization has been working with Broward County Transit, is on an app. So that way you'd be able to know when the bus is coming. We can't predict if it's going to be delayed, and the traffic conditions, the bus is operating within a traffic lane, so there could be an accident, there could be multiple things that cause the delay. But if your phone, and most people nowadays have these smartphones, that they'll be able to tell you when that bus is coming, it would at least provide you with the reliability of, you'd know when you needed to get to where the bus stop was, so that way you're there and you know what time the bus is going to show up. As far as trying to get on-time performance, we've also been working with Broward County government on traffic signalization timing, which will allow the buses to preempt the traffic lights, so that way they will flow on time. And that's actually a very important next step in making the existing system much more efficient.
Mary, I know you're there on the phone with a question. Hang tight for one quick second, because I don't want to go too far away. Bill, did you want to add on to something that he was saying about
Yeah, I thought I'd just add on to the economic discussion. There's a federal statistic that's published each year, and a family can save over $9,000 a year currently by perhaps not having two cars and just having one car. And if they can use transit for some of their work trips or their school trips and just cut down on, on how many cars that you have to purchase and insure and fuel.
Maintain.
Right, it
repair.
adds up, and it's $9,000 or $10,000, and I'm thinking that's maybe a vacation or a new TV or whatever, but something other than just the car. So there really are economic benefits, and the other thought that I had as you were speaking was that transit does two primary trips and moves two primary types of people. Number one, people who are going to work, and number two, people who are going to school. And those are the people that really, need to be supported. And so it's really an important aspect of building a community, educating the young folks, and like you were saying, the millennials who really have a preference. They're going to be on their smartphone. They'd rather not be driving. They'd rather be communicating and connecting with their friends.
We hope they're not driving while they're texting, obviously. Mary in Fort Lauderdale, are you still there?
Okay, I am a handicap, and I find it very hard to get to the doctors, and I do go with someone that charges $20 for each doctor I go to now. Next week I had 3 doctors. That's $60. And $60 on somebody that's on Social Security is a lot of money. I thought maybe somebody can help me. I did try.
I think she got cut off there. Who would like to take that?
I'm going to hit that at the beginning, and maybe somebody else would like to join in, one of the other panelists. But there is actually the transit-dependent, a transit disadvantage program that the Broward MPO with Broward County as the community transit group is actually moving forward with, and there's ways to utilize them to go from where you live to your doctors and back. There's some qualifications. If you go visit the browardmpo.org website, or at least call the 876-954-876-0034 number, and we can, basically help you find someone that would provide you a potential service to get to your doctors. That's a major issue. Most of our residents are going to be 55 and older in 2030. And we're preparing for that as an issue, because there's going to be people that are going to need to go to the hospitals, to your doctors, to provide feeding centers and all the rest that we're really actually looking at. So that's something to consider. I don't know, Bill or...
I think you covered it.
Okay.
Tasha, are you there? Our phones are super active tonight. I love it.
Hi, I've heard all about both All Aboard Florida and the Tri-Rail link. But I don't get what the difference is between the two and why we need 2 different train services.
Excellent question.
Okay.
Tasha, hang tight.
Thank you, Tasha. I'm so happy to answer that question. So All Aboard Florida is a private company. They're associated with the owners of the Florida East Coast Railway, and their service would be an express train service from downtown Miami, stopping in downtown Fort Lauderdale, downtown West Palm, and then going up to Orlando. It would be relatively high speed in some portions north of West Palm. They're looking at running at 125 miles an hour. It'd also be a private sector, more expensive ticket, more amenities, not commuter rail. The Tri-Rail Coastal Link, on the other hand, is much more similar to what you see down here currently in Tri-Rail. And so we're looking at trying to put service similar to Tri-Rail on the FEC that would complement All Aboard. So while All Aboard Florida would only have 3 stations in the South Florida region, we would have between 20 and 25, and we would serve the local trips and serve in and out of all the downtowns. And our fare structure would be more similar to what you have currently with the Tri-Rail service.
For folks who have been to Europe, are you then equating the all aboard, kind of like the trains you see in Europe, those fast trains that take you from, like the port where the ship docks, it takes you to, I don't know, the big city? Is that pretty much the idea?
That's certainly part of their plan, absolutely. They want to try to get to the business traveler who's going to Orlando for just a day or so, so they'll have a higher class of service. They're also looking at the families who maybe are vacationing in Orlando and want to come down from Miami for the day or two. So their trains will be a little bit different. They are more like what you might see in Europe, or an Amtrak would be really the only example that we would have here in the United States at this point in time.
And I think just to clarify for any viewers that don't know the difference between where Tri-Rail runs now versus the FEC line, that's that East Coast line that runs along parallel to West Dixie Highway. So it'll be a much different corridor that will be able to access for transportation locally and express to Orlando.
All right, if you're just joining us until 8 o'clock tonight, you have a chance to share what's on your mind when it comes to Broward's transportation future. If you currently use the transportation that's available, what would you do to improve it? If you don't currently use public transportation, what would you need to change that? You can take part in tonight's discussion in one of two ways. If you're joining us by phone and you'd like to ask a question, just press 0 anytime. You can also ask a question via our online chat by going to speakupbroward.org. Gabriel from Margate here. This comes up every single week. There are too many pedestrian and bicyclist deaths in Broward. Can we enforce the texting while driving ban?
I'm gonna try that one, Jade. I don't mean to monopolize. Realistically, there's an enforcement issue that requires additional police on the ground, additional cameras in the air, additional ways of being able to figure out who is texting when they're driving and how. I was out of the state 2 weeks ago, and I happened to notice every day I would read the local paper in Fort Lauderdale as I was away, and there was a pedestrian death every day. And that went on for a series of 5 days. That's unacceptable. We can't be that type of place. We can't attract the tourists, the 10 million tourists that come to to Broward every year. Those folks are, one, being threatened by our own vehicles and people that could be texting and driving, or distracted, or don't know where they're going, or many other things. So if you start looking at the way we need to be able to do this, it's enforcement issues, it's design of the streets, it's design of sidewalks, it's design of safety equipment, it's design of pedestrian equipment, because sometimes you don't even realize you only have a limited time to cross a street, or you might even be crossing a street in an area you believe is a safe place to cross, but it doesn't have the signalization.
Mason, you want to add to that?
Yeah, and let me just add to that. Sometimes increased enforcement leads to increased avoidance, meaning that people find ways of defeating increased enforcement. So I think the real answer, and I'm not a transportation expert, I'm the jobs guy, it lies in the use of technology. That is, apps and other kinds of disabling things on phones that prevent it from texting while the car is in motion, unless you're in the unless you're in the passenger seat or in the back, and the GPS can figure that out. So I think it's probably the long-term answer is going to be in technology.
Well, you started it. You're the jobs guy. Here's an online question for you from our online chat. What are some things that employers can do to help their workers get to work easier or cheaper, Mr. Jobs Guy?
Well, cheaper, they can promote carpooling. They can go on to the county's transportation site, and on there you've got route planners, so they can help those people find the most efficient route. And I believe the system even integrates with some of the shuttles and the local transportation provided by the cities. So those are some of the things that they can do. One of the things that we did at Career Source Broward was we began to stagger our hours a little bit, so that we used to start at 8:30 and went to 5, and I found that if I moved that up and went from 8 to 4:30, my staff got to jump on the traffic and actually in some cases cut a half an hour off of their commute time just by staggering. Washington, D.C. did that a few years ago. When all the government offices let out at the same time, it was pandemonium. So they began to stagger the start and stop times of the organization so that they could titrate the traffic a little bit better.
Dave, this one's for you from the online chat. What are nonprofit service providers, how are nonprofit service providers impacted by the transportation in Broward?
Another great question. Many of the of our nonprofit providers are serving people that are vulnerable populations. So we see elderly or people with disabilities. Many of these people rely on public transportation to get to anywhere on a daily basis. And so we really need to look at what kind of bus stops do we have that are safe. Do they have covers for when it's when there's inclement weather, like it never rains here in Florida? So and do we have enough frequency of bus service? So it's for our vulnerable populations that we serve in nonprofits, having a really strong public transportation is critical to their being able to get around. So that's very important.
Daryl on the, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I was just going to add one other thing, and that is that today's jobs require constant learning. Days are over when you went to school and graduated and you went and got a job. Today, lifelong learning is going to be the hallmark of it, and if people want to keep jobs, they want to advance in their jobs, they're going to have to go back to school from time to time. And that means if they're working during the day, you're going to have adequate and convenient bus service during the evening hours in order to get to the colleges and the universities and the career and technical education facilities that we have so that they can upgrade and continue to progress along their employment trajectory.
Yeah, gone are the days of, honey, I'm home, right?
That's right.
All right, Daryl on the phone with a question for one of our panelists. Good evening, Daryl.
Yes.
What is your question?
Yes. Hi, how you doing? Yes, I'd like to know, does Broward County have any plans for any type of mass transit or light rail system from the airport to the seaport?
I'm going to grab on that, and then Bill, if you want to add. Currently, we do have plans to, we're working on plans anyway, to extend the WAVE streetcar from downtown Fort Lauderdale out to the airport and then down to the convention center on 17th Street. Eventually, it was our desire and our board's desire for that system to go from, once it gets out to the airport, go out Griffin Road out to the university complex where we are tonight and actually connect Nova Southeastern, FAU, BC, all the campuses that are out here, UF, to the airport, to downtown, and to the convention center and the seaport ultimately. So if you look at that potential system, there are plans. It's about $800 million to build, and I want to say somewhere in the neighborhood of about $25 to $30 million a year to operate. And those become important things as we have this dialogue tonight, is that people like yourself should be out there, if this is something you believe we should be building, is let our folks know, and that way we can help make these decisions easier for our elected officials. And Bill Cross talked about the WAVE streetcar in downtown. He's been actively working on that. But those connections, not only the WAVE streetcar, but also to Tri-Rail, both on the east tracks and the west tracks, allow for even greater connectivity. So I want to let him have a chance.
I think you covered it pretty well, Greg, but I guess all I'll add is that it's many of the same group that are working on the WAVE streetcar are also working on these issues. The Florida Department of Transportation is leading the effort, has been a really good partner on the WAVE streetcar. We're going to have that open as a starter system here in a couple of years, and I think people are really going to get excited when they see the opportunity for the future with that streetcar, and I'm sure that they're going to be interested in seeing all those extensions happen.
Jade, real quick on dealing with that, and this is actually something that I found really unique. Having all the elected officials that I have on my board, we had to vote on the WAVE streetcar. Not only should it even exist, but even how does it get its funding. And to have the mayor of Pembroke Pines, Mayor Ortiz, stand up, who will never, ever probably see the streetcar in his lifetime out in Pembroke Pines, say, I support this, not because it's just good for the local economy, to create jobs, to provide folks a way to get around, but also that he realizes that you need to start somewhere. Somebody needs to start somewhere to build a system, and that system starts in downtown Fort Lauderdale. So, Bill, thank you for all your work on that, and Mayor, thank you.
Oh, And that's why tonight it's our final eTownHall meeting, and that's why these questions, these comments, these concerns that you have, put them on the table. We're here until 8 o'clock. If you're just joining us, welcome to this discussion of the future of transportation in Broward County, where you are an important element in the direction this goes. If you're joining by phone and would like to ask a question, press 0 at any time. You can also ask a question via our online chat. I have it right here next to me. The laptop is loaded here with questions. Just go to speakupbroward.org. I hope she's still there. Christina, our phones are on fire tonight. Christina, are you still there?
Hi.
Hi there. What's your question?
Christina. Yeah, I was wondering why we have less money for transportation when gas keeps getting more expensive. Isn't that where the money comes from?
Uh-oh. I think Greg is getting himself ready, and it's one of the questions here, the next one actually, is how can Broward County increase our transportation funding to fund improvements?
Christina, right now, and I hope you can see this on either the video or on television, gas goes up and goes down. The gas tax is not indexed to the price of gas going up or down. So basically, the gas tax is exactly where it was 20 years ago. And cars have become more fuel efficient. Gas, even though the gas is gone when I was a kid, and my first time I put gas in my car, it was somewhere around 75 cents a gallon. To give an idea, now we're up at, what, $3? I saw it the other day, $3.19 for regular. Luckily, I put regular in my car. That gas tax hasn't increased. So while gas prices have gone up, the amount of money that we get actually has gone down considerably from 20, 30 years ago. So that's been our biggest challenge that we're facing. And I don't know if you had a chance to watch last week with the representatives from the Congress that were here on the show. That's something that Washington is the one that actually has to deal with that. Price indexing potential for gas tax would be a phenomenal way of us being able to provide cash for our transportation systems, whether it be Tri-Rail, the East-West, Tri-Rail Coastal Link, all the bus systems, all the things that we actually need, the community shuttles that the cities operate to get to work and get around. But that is one of the areas we really need help. Those folks and yourself out there need to tell their elected officials, especially in Congress, what are you doing here? While gas prices have gone up, we're not getting the benefit of that increase, ironically, in the revenues. And every time you get a car, whether it's a hybrid or a car that's getting 30, 40 miles to the gallon when cars used to get 16, that's another thing that costs, ironically, and I'm not advising you to get a gas guzzler, so please don't take us the wrong way, but that's one of the things we're dealing with as a challenge.
And it's important to know, cars are going to continue to get more fuel efficient, and we can't rely on the gasoline tax anymore. We're going to have to, as a community and as a state, look at other funding options to fund our transportation needs.
Can I add to that? I think one of the other things that's important to point out, for many years now, the federal government and the gas tax have gone primarily to fund capital improvements and not the operating dollars. And the example of the Wave streetcar, the federal government's participating at 50%, which is excellent for this region. We're getting some of our gas dollars back. Unfortunately, you still have to pay for these types of transit services over time, and that's more of a local, regional, and state responsibility. And just like the federal dollars, the local funding, it struggles to keep up with the demand and with the needs.
Elizabeth from Fort Lauderdale joining us on the phone, which, by the way, you can do at any time by simply pressing 0. Elizabeth?
Hi, good evening.
Good evening. What's your question?
My question is why the bus stops doesn't have enough sheds, because it's really hot, and when it's hot, standing at a bus stop is really uncomfortable, and if it's not hot, it's raining. And for me, I struggle with an overactive bladder, and it's really uncomfortable and fear. A lot of fear comes to me when it's too hot, and then I really want to pee, and another thing, when it's raining, I'm getting panic. So what can you do to help us put a better bus stop?
Excellent question, Elizabeth. Who wants to take that?
I guess I'm going to do that. Elizabeth, just to share with you, the shelters that have been constructed recently are part of a $36 million investment in shelters. The reasons some of them are smaller are twofold. One, it's a function of right-of-way. Basically, we don't own the property adjacent to the sidewalks to allow for the larger shelters. And then the second is actually ridership. Broward County Transit made a decision to size the shelters differently based on the number of riders at that location. So those are the two reasons why they are that way. I can commit to this to you now. The MPO, working with Broward County Transit and our other transit providers at the municipal government level, will be looking to make the shelters larger over the next several years, look to help Broward County acquire the right-of-way necessary to increase the size of their shelters. And our board has made a very firm commitment over the next 25 years to make local investments, about $500 billion basically, in sidewalk and pedestrian improvements that'll help make your experience better. I can't deliver it tomorrow, but we are working on it, and that is a commitment I can tell you that will happen soon.
We have another phone participant, Roderick, joining us tonight. Good evening, Roderick.
Good evening.
What is your question, sir?
My question is kind of a question and a comment to touch on what was spoken about earlier as far as other ways to fund these transportation projects. And I was wondering if any people on the panel were familiar with Oregon's pilot program, in which they use a road usage charge program where they charge people per mile fee. And I think that's with the gas tax being not a sustainable way to fund programs. I saw that as a program that it made a lot of sense. It made a lot more sense to charge people for the road that they're using. And I was wondering what could be done to get something like that on the ballot to be looked at.
Do you just want my chair and
I
my
know,
microphone
right?
and just, you know?
Thank you, Jade. And Roderick, phenomenal question.
Excellent question.
Great knowledge about what's happening in Oregon. It's phenomenal. The vehicle miles traveled fee that is a pilot project out in the state of Oregon. A lot of that has to do with, obviously it's a direct user fee, so as many miles as you travel, you actually pay for what you're using. That is a great way to raise revenue. Unfortunately, and I'm going to pull my phone out of my pocket, the concern is that we'll know where you're going. The government's going to know, that you've gone from your house to the gas station, to your job, to the hospital, to the shopping center, and then back to your house. And there's, some issues with privacy that come along with that. Now, I'll be frank, my phone knows where I am. And there's folks that collect that information and sell it back to people like myself to prepare transportation plans. So there is that actually going on today, and all of our wireless providers actually provide that data to these secondhand vendors. That said, if we move to vehicle miles traveled tax, we would need to move away from the current gas tax that we're doing. The infrastructure isn't in place at this point in time for that to be nationalized across the country. It's something that would have to be rolled out in a very prescribed manner because you'd want to be eliminating the gas tax on one end and increasing the vehicle mile travels tax, and you'd have to have folks being able to collect it and distribute the funds. All of that is actually being in a conversation that's happening in Washington, D.C. Well, not happening today because they're all out campaigning. They are discussing this in the Transportation Infrastructure Committee in the House, in the Public Works Committee in the Senate. We fully expect, Bill and myself and everybody here will benefit from this, is the new transportation bill coming out. This is also something that our friends in the libertarian world have been looking at as well and are supporting vehicle mile travel tax, and they're basically suggesting that to our representatives in Congress. So we'll see how that rolls out. I think that was a very progressive move on the state of Oregon. Privacy issues have to be dealt with, but ultimately, I believe that's where you'll see the future happen as far as where the taxes go.
And Roderick, I encourage you to go to the Speak Up Broward website because there's scenarios there of different funding options that we're looking at as a community that I think are important. That mileage tax is one of them, but there's other things that we can do as a community to look at to see what kind of revenue we can raise from those other options.
You guys make it so easy to ping pong these questions because Mason on the online chat, what role can the business community play in raising funds to improve the transportation system?
Well, I think raising the issues. I think that our elected officials tend to not only listen to the voters, but they listen to the business community. Business community often supports the election of our elected officials. So I think the business community can speak up about these issues, how important transportation is to them, and then help also to educate their workforce, making that information available to them, letting them know about Speak Up Broward and other resources that are out there. So the business community can play a very, very important role here.
Well, and obviously, you know, jobs and transportation, I'm going to try and paraphrase this concern here, closely related. But given the kind of jobs that we have here, are we trying to accommodate the business that we have here, or is our goal to bring more businesses, meaning more jobs, with a more appealing transportation system?
Well, that's twofold. I mean, right now, just in terms of sheer number, we have a tourism and hospitality dependent economy here. To some extent, construction kind of went away, but it's coming back now. Also, just again, in terms of sheer number, retail trade, retail and wholesale trade are the major number of jobs here. And those businesses, by their nature, have a workforce that typically uses mass transit. So in order to support the businesses that we've got here, we've got to have mass transit to be able to go to those, for the employees to get to the work site. Beyond that, as I was talking about a little bit earlier, today's talent is environmentally sensitive. They like mass transit. They want to move to a place that has a good transit system. And so and young people are making lifestyle decisions. They're moving to where they want to live, and actually the businesses are following them. They're following the talent. Used to be that people moved to where the jobs are. Now they're moving to where they want to live, and the jobs are following them. So it makes good sense in terms of economic development for this community to have an adequate and functioning and efficient mass transit system.
You want to add to
that?
that?
I'd like to add that, you know, in a few very short months, the state of Florida will become the third largest state in the country. Do we as a state have third largest state kinds of solutions? And as the soon to be third largest state, we really need to look at our transportation needs and start to make those kinds of investments in our infrastructure and transportation so that we become competitive and that we can meet the demands that a third largest state is going to have in the future.
All right, I don't know how much time we have left because I'm not wearing my watch, but remember, this is our last eTownHall meeting. If you want to get your question in there, or you've got a comment or concern, and you're on the phone right now, press 0 at any time, okay? Or you can go to speakupbroward.org and partake in our online chat. Bill, how is the federal government supporting the new rail projects coming to Broward?
Well, the federal government's been a really good partner for the region, and they continue to support our efforts to bring commuter rail to the Florida East Coast Rail Corridor. Again, as was mentioned earlier, that is the corridor that's furthest to the east. It goes through all of the historic downtowns, and it would be a great corridor to serve a lot of businesses, a lot of residences, as well as create economic opportunities. The federal government's right there with us. We've had visits from the Federal Railroad Administration, the Federal Transit Administration, different congresspeople, and they all recognize that there's great opportunities down here in this region, and that's a great opportunity to invest in rail, move a lot of people, get them to their jobs, get them to education, and boost the economy while we're doing that. So the federal government's been very supportive, but I will put one caveat on it, which is the federal government also expects us to take care of our business here locally, which is having local dedicated funding that's going to support and run the system for the 20 years. They will be there to help us fund it, at least at 50%, the capital, the upfront. But we have to, as a region, be ready and have our own source of income to fund the ongoing operations.
If I had to pick one of the top 3 concerns on Speak Up Broward, on our online, on the phone call, it's this right here, and Keegan is asking it tonight. Are there any plans for an east-west rail connection in Broward County?
Well, I think Greg addressed that partially earlier. I don't think there's any plans currently for a commuter rail type system because of the short distance really from the ocean out to the Everglades. It's only a few miles, so there's just not that kind of density or demand for a heavy rail, commuter rail. However, that's why they have light rail and streetcars. These are lower capacity, lower cost, but they can move people very efficiently and effectively. And there are plans to at least come out here to the education center, connecting into our Fort Lauderdale Airport, another major economic hub, and then connecting to the port and downtown Fort Lauderdale. So there are plans, and again, we're somewhat limited, budget constrained, but certainly we think about it because it's a great opportunity for the community.
And Jade, if I can just add on to that, well, you have the central core here that Bill's talking about with the east-west project going from the education campus downtown, airport, seaport. There's also to the north and to the south. If you look to Miramar Parkway or you look to Hollywood Pines to the south, that east-west corridor can be served by what is called bus rapid transit. That could be buses operating in dedicated lanes. They're actually exclusive type of vehicles. They're not your typical city or county bus. So that way you're feeling like you're moving in a higher capacity vehicle like a light rail, but at least we can get that into the ground sooner. Again, it all has to do with funding and our ability to leverage what we need to be able to do. And that way we can continue to attract jobs, we can expand our economy, we can provide our folks with what they need to make sure that their lives are done well and maybe save that $8,000 a year. I think it's more than a TV.
You know, my panel last week and we all agreed to, after the show, going outside with buckets, and maybe we can just start taking donations and or maybe a telethon. I mean, they're coming up with some
challenge.
Yeah. Online chat question. Half of Fort Lauderdale does not have sidewalks, and the half that does, the city allows homeowners to use as parking spaces. How can you plan a public transportation system if residents cannot walk to it safely?
Do you want to hit it?
I'll start,
Okay.
and I think it's a great point. I mean, the value of transit is that it really energizes people. The pedestrian connection is crucial because people can then be on the street. It brings the street to life. They can then hop on the transit. But if you don't have a safe sidewalk, you don't have a place where you can walk, then that's a challenge. So the transit, even if it's there, if you don't have that pedestrian connection for the last portion of the trip, it's challenging. And again, I know Greg and the MPO are working on addressing that issue.
We have over $100 million worth of sidewalk projects in the next 5 years. And that's only the beginning of the surface of really what's actually necessary. But every trip, every day, as Bill said, when you wake up in the morning, even if you're driving, you actually walk to your car. And many of you don't have garages. You're actually walking out to your parking lot. You're on a sidewalk then. We need to be able to connect you as safely and efficiently as possible. That's something we're working on. Even while the transit systems don't have enough money to operate the way they are, we can at least put the infrastructure in, the sidewalks, the lighting, the street furniture, benches, chairs, information kiosks, so that way you know where the transit is coming. All of that stuff can be put in now while we're working on longer-term funding solutions.
Dave, this one's for you. How are you considering seniors and those of us, I like that us word in there, that become elderly in the next 10 to 20 years?
Well, one of the things we know is Broward County is going to be experiencing a silver tsunami within the next decade, where our population here is aging, but also people moving here, retiring here to South Florida will be coming. So we know that the older people get, they drive less and they're going to rely more on other forms of transportation. So it's going to be important now that we start making those kinds of infrastructure investments to get ready for that to happen. So that's a big issue for seniors right now.
Another thing we've discussed a lot about is obviously the folks living here now, our generation, us non-seniors quite yet, our mindset is the car. You're laughing at me, but you know, I mean, we grew up with the car, and I agree that right now, do you see that we're kind of flipping that, and that the next generation, our kids and then their kids, we will have more of a New York, Boston setup where it's like a car costs too much money to keep or buy or maintain a car?
Well, one of the things we know, not only seniors drive less, but millennials actually prefer other forms of transportation over cars more and more. And so they love living in the kinds of communities where they have other options, where they have mass transit. So, you know, it's not just a generational question for our seniors, but younger adults also prefer having those other kinds of options.
They actually see driving as an inconvenience, not a convenience.
I certainly do.
Right, but they do too. I mean, they want to be connected on their iPhones. It's
Answering
time away
emails.
for answering emails and things like that, and doing other kinds of things. And most people going back and forth to work want to make that time productive as well. So they really, I think we've lost kind of our love of going from point to point in a car by ourselves. I think we're as a society, we are more primed to take mass transit now.
My niece, who grew up in Weston and actually went to a Western high school, she didn't actually get her driver's license until she was almost 20. And now she has a car. However, the most important thing to her was her phone, her smartphone, and Snapchat and FaceTime and all of these things. That was actually more important than actually having a car. When we were growing up, all of us here, except somebody from Texas. But as we were growing up in Southeast Florida, the first thing you wanted was to have a car because you wanted to go to Fort Lauderdale or Miami, or you didn't want to go to necessarily at that time to Miami Beach, but that's, you know, what the world we grew up in. And the roadway system that we developed here was based on what was an accepted norm at that time. You build as many roads as possible, as wide as possible, to move as much traffic. The millennial generation, my nieces and nephews, they don't want that. And I think that that's going to be, that capturing them and keeping them here is going to be, how do we rebuild this place to allow for that?
If you're listening on the phone, don't forget, this is our last eTownHall. This is a very unique opportunity for you to ask that question. Press 0 at any time, or go to speakupbroward.org for online chatting, which Phil has done. And I'm going to put this question out there, and I would like each one of you to give me an answer, or give Phil an answer, I should say, okay? Here's the question. How do we continue this conversation for the long term, and how can we as residents of Broward County help? And I know it's going to be about the money, so.
No. I'm going to say, don't let the conversation die. When you talk to your elected officials, bring this issue up. Let your elected officials know that's important to you. If you are contributing to campaigns, let whoever you know that you're giving a campaign contribution to, that this is an important issue to you and you want to see action on it. You know, there's an old thing, put your money where your mouth is. I'm saying put your mouth where your money is. And let them know that this is an important issue. Don't let it die.
Right. Bill?
Okay, so I'll jump in. I think that, you know, as a region here, we often underestimate how dense we've become. And our road system has reached pretty much the end of investment. We can't do that anymore. We have to do something else. And so really, to me, it comes down to investing in choice for the future. And that's what transit's about at this point. You know, we're not going to take away anybody's car, but we want to provide people choice and opportunity. It's important for the region. It can save our residents money, and it will keep the region competitive as we move forward in time.
All right, before Greg and Dave answer, I want to go to Matt, who's on the phone before we close the show tonight. Matt? You there, Matt?
Hi. I just wanted to ask the question, do you think the current status of our transportation system keeps businesses and employees from locating here?
I couldn't understand the question.
I think,
what was the question?
Do you want me to? I think what Matt said was, do you think our current transportation system keeps employees and employers from locating here?
No, I don't think it keeps them from locating here. I think that we have a quality of life here that attracts people from all over the world. It attracts businesses. Our lead economic development agency, the Greater Fort Lauderdale Alliance, has been very successful in getting businesses to locate here. No, I don't think it prevents them from coming here, but I think it makes, in some cases, it makes it not as convenient as it could be, and I think we could make the quality of life even more attractive to those businesses and to that talent if we had a much better transportation system.
Okay, back to the original question. Your turn, Greg.
Okay, thank you very much, Jade. And building that future and where we're headed is so vitally important. Attracting the other businesses that we can bring here and attracting growth, even growing the existing businesses that we have, all very important. We have built our roads to the maximum design. Basically, I-75 is getting several new managed lanes placed on it. 595 has a managed lane. You're going to see that on 95. We'll finish up the Sawgrass Expressway. We're pretty much done. $150 million a mile to add a new lane, $30 million for construction. The balance is right-of-way acquisition. The Wave streetcar is $30 million less than 1 mile of road. To give anybody an idea of really what we're talking about. So now, we've spent the money that we needed to on our roadway system. Now we have to have that next layer. The density, Bill is correct, we're getting to where we need to be. The employment base, we're very fortunate that we have in Sunrise, Plantation, Cypress Creek, downtown Fort Lauderdale, Miramar. We know where these employment bases are. We can help them grow and become more centered so folks can have a justification for having light rail or streetcar to get to those environments so folks can actually do that. That said, I think we have a great future.
Oh, Dave?
I say stay involved, make your voice heard. We will only have a world-class transportation system if we as individuals and as a community make that happen. So we need to pressure and keep on top of our elected officials to let them know that this is important to us as a community.
All right. Well, we want to thank all of you and all of you, every single one of you, for joining us in this very important discussion about the future of transportation in our fast-growing county. You are such a huge part of this effort to make Broward County's transportation system effective and one that residents, businesses, and tourists are going to want to use. Now, our live chat and phone lines are closed, but if you were not able to get that question or that comment or that concern or whatever's on your mind on the table here tonight, we still want to hear from you. Every comment is heard. It's considered. Just go to our website at speakupbroward.org or you call this number. Ready? 954-641-8141. That's 954-641-8141. Leave your message right there on our message line. And don't forget, we've got that interactive online survey for that chance at the $500 prize. Just go to speakupbroward.org, speakupbroward.org, and I believe that's until the 24th of October. So get to that. On behalf of this entire panel, you guys have been fantastic, but nobody's volunteered to hold that bucket with me after the show, to start our collection, to show that we mean business, that we want a top-notch transportation system. We want to be on the map with all those other big cities because we got prettier people anyway, right?
That's right. Exactly.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
Thanks, Jane.